Hi, I'm Chris Miller. I'm the Director for the Division of Reactor Safety in the Nuclear Regulatory Commission Region 1, which is our Northeast region. So we have a two-part meeting here. The first part is, as you can see, a open house where we have a chance to discuss one-on-one with any interested members of the public, the plant performance. And then following that, from 7 to 8, we're going to have a public meeting that will be a question and answer session where members of the public can ask questions and the NRC staff will be available to answer them. So it's good seeing you today. Thanks for coming out.
Derek Jones. I'm the operations manager at the plant. So this is the reactor building. It's where the vessel is. It's where we make the steam to provide over to the turbine to produce the electricity, which is what I think Mitch just spoke about before. So you got the two separate buildings here, and just a mock-up of both. This piece up here that you see just to the left of the reactor vessel, that's the spent fuel pool. That's where we store the spent fuel in that area before it moves on to dry cask storage. So the spent fuel assemblies, what you can see is down at the bottom there. That would be a mock-up of what the spent fuel pool consists of.
All right, these are common sources of radiation, either through natural background or as a result of different things such as radiation scanning in the medical industry. Cigarette smoking produces exposure to the body. So just these display of some common items in your household possibly, or in just in our society. There's probably not much activity left on it. It's fairly old, but those were common things for to have because of glow in the dark, right? And so there's natural activity there that would make it glow.
My name is Mitch Chamberlain. I'm an operator at Vermont Yankee Operations. So this is the turbine building where the steam from the reactor is converted into electricity. So what this represents is the steam-driven turbine, and at the end is electrical generator where we put electricity out to the grid. This part of the plant would be very similar for any type of power generation, whether it was nuclear or coal or natural gas or anything like that.
Okay. So again, I want to start over because I want to make sure everyone understands the safety significance of the meeting. The exit will be, the emergency exit will be out that way. If you haven't seen yet, the restrooms are to your left when you go out the door. Also, let me start again. My name is George Smith, and I'll be facilitating meetings, but just to make sure you know who I am. A couple of administrative things. Cell phones. If you have cell phones, if you could please put them in a courtesy mode. That's vibrate or silence. And also, if you have to take a phone call, we understand that, but we ask that you step outside the meeting and take your phone call, because we're trying to keep the sidebar conversations to a minimum. Speak on sidebar conversations if you need to speak with each other. Again, we're trying to be respectful of all of the speakers, so we'd like for you to allow the speakers to ask their questions and to give their comments. The best way I've seen is the nonverbals. You can give a thumbs up if you like, a thumbs down, or I've seen waving of the hands to say if you like what the commenter is saying. But if we have a lot of extra disruptions, it's going to prolong or not allow everyone who would like to speak. You won't give them an opportunity. So I have a lot of cards in my hand here of everyone who would like to give comments or to ask questions. So let's give everyone an opportunity. Just like we did earlier, if we have a lot of interruptions for the meeting, we're going to have to take a pause. And then the NRC, they're going to have to decide if, how they'll go forward from that point. The way we're going to allow you to make comments or to ask questions, we have a live mic in the back. So I'll call 3 names, The first person will be able to ask their comment or to ask their questions or make a comment. The other two, if you could please stand by. And then once the person who's speaking is finished, I'll call another name. And then that person can come and stand by and prepare to ask a question or to make a comment. The meeting is scheduled for an hour. But again, the more interruptions we have, the less opportunity we have for those who would like to make comments to do so. So please be mindful of that. Let's be respectful of everyone. The last thing I would like to say is that I've gone over the cards and I've asked some of those who would like to make comments how to pronounce their name. If I mispronounce your name, I'm sorry. Just allow me to, or let me know how the proper way to pronounce your name, and I'll make sure I do it in the future. Now I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Chris Miller, and he's going to make a couple of comments, and he'll turn it over to Dr. Bowman.
Thanks, George. I'll keep my comments very brief. First of all, I just want to introduce you to the team that we have here. Again, my name is Chris Miller. I'm the Director for the Division of Reactor Safety in our Region 1 King of Prussia office. And we have really the most knowledgeable people about the plant performance here with us tonight. So let me start with Sarah over here.
I'm Sarah Rich. I'm the Resident Inspector at Vermont Yankee.
I'm Ron Bellamy. I'm the NRC Region 1 Branch Chief out of the King of Prussia office, and it's my responsibility to ensure that the inspection program is appropriately done at Vermont Yankee and documented.
My name is Scott Rittencoder. I'm the Senior Resident Inspector assigned to Vermont Yankee.
My name is Rich Guzman. I'm a project manager in the NRC's Office of Nuclear Reactor Regulation. I manage the technical reviews associated with the licensing aspects of Vermont Yankee.
My name is Joe DeBoer. I'm a project engineer in Region 1 that supports Vermont Yankee.
Great. And first of all, I just want to say thank you to all of you who came. We have these meetings so we can get some interaction and some discussion on Vermont Yankee topics, and I know that there is interest. Appreciate all the people that participated in the open house session over next door. And that session went well. We had a lot of opportunity to discuss the good issues and good questions that came out of that session. You know, it's a nice day here. You could have been doing other things with your time, but you chose to be here. So we'll try to make it as efficient and effective as possible. Thank you very much. I'll turn it over to Ron Bellamy.
Thank you. The stated purpose of tonight's meeting was to discuss the NRC's assessment of Vermont Yankee's performance in calendar year 2012, as well as any other safety perspectives and to answer your questions in these areas. I will state that the NRC does a very exhaustive inspection program at Vermont Yankee, as well as all of the other operating plants in the United States. We inspected over 5,700 hours on site during the year. A lot of those hours were directly due to Scott and Sarah. Scott and Sarah are NRC employees, although they live in this area and they report to Vermont Yankee and work there for their 40-hour work week. They do report to me. We talk continually. We have morning meetings every day to discuss what's going on at the plant. And I can tell you from personal experience that they have absolutely no hesitation in calling me 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. If there's any issue whatsoever at the plant or anything that they need to talk about. We do our inspection program by observing what the licensee does. We then see if we have any findings with respect to the safety significance of issues that may not have gone exactly as Entergy had hoped and as we had anticipated. And we then characterize those findings. We then also take a look at some numerical guidelines that the industry has agreed upon that we call performance indicators. And we take all of this information and we get together at a senior management level in the NRC twice a year. And we spend considerable days talking about all of the plants, and we determine what we actually come out with the significance of any of the findings that were identified at Vermont Yankee for the year. I can tell you that there were a number of issues identified at Vermont Yankee in calendar year 2012. I personally signed out 4 inspection reports. Those inspection reports are available on Adams. You can take a look at them, and you can actually see the findings that we came up with during the year. Those findings were all characterized as green, which means they had low safety significance, low to minor safety significance. When that is the conclusion that we come to, we put the plant in the part of our process that we call a reactor oversight process action matrix. And that action matrix puts Vermont Yankee in the licensee response column for calendar year 2012. And that means that we will continue our baseline inspection program at Vermont Yankee going forward. So in a letter that was signed out to Entergy, and that letter was signed out on March 4th, that letter is also available in Adams. You can see documented the NRC's conclusion with respect to Vermont Yankee's performance in calendar year 2012. And that conclusion, as stated in that letter, is that Vermont Yankee operated in a manner that preserved public health and safety and met all cornerstone objectives of the NRC's reactor oversight process for calendar year 2012. George?
Thank you. As a reminder, we do have some public meeting feedback forms that are out on the table if you would like to make a comment. Also, we have Sam Haskins from Senator Sanders' office. Just want to recognize you. So we're going to I'll call 3 people up who would like to make comments. Again, from the amount of comment cards we have, everyone has about 3 minutes, so you'll see time with you. And we'll try to move the meeting on so everyone can make their comments. So the first 3 personnel will be Meredith Anglin, Guy Page, and Don Oden.
Hello, my name is Meredith Anglin, and I used to work at the Electric Power Research Institute, first in the renewable group and later in the nuclear group. And I really won't take the whole 3 minutes. I just want to say thank you for coming down here, and thank you for all the work you do doing the inspection of the plant. I know that the NRC gets it from both sides. The opponents say they're not doing good enough, and the plant sometimes say that they're unbelievably bureaucratic paperwork. I've heard that, not at this plant. I didn't mean at this plant, but I've heard that too. And I just want to say that it's a really, I have patents in nitrogen oxide abatement, which is whenever you have a combustion system that runs at any efficiency, you've got nitrogen oxide. It's an acid gas, it's an ozone-forming gas, it's a smog-forming gas. And I am so happy that we have a nuclear plant in this state which keeps our air clean, and we have a group of people at the NRC who are willing to come and inspect it many, many hours a day and come to meetings like this, which are sometimes difficult. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Lisa Wyman will be after the next 2 folks come up.
Guy Page, the Vermont Energy Partnership. And George, the first question I had is, I have a statement, written statement. I wondered if it would be possible to give it to the panel. Would that be all right?
I'll give it to him. And as a reminder, if you have a question, please ask your question first so you can get feedback.
Yes.
And not just to everyone, and then you can make comments.
Okay. My question is, first I just really want to say that we applaud the NRC for its effective, diligent oversight of Vermont Yankee. I think you're doing a great job. The question I want to know I had a good discussion with Sarah, actually, beforehand about spent fuel and how it's handled. And one of my questions is, I'm curious, what kind of training and education do NRC inspectors receive? What is both the academic and then the post-academic training that involves before you folks are on site and working? And I was also sort of curious, Sarah, in fact, this is probably more the main question, how you would assess as you work with employees, the human aspect of this, how you would assess the safety culture at BY.
Thanks for the question. I heard 2 things: safety culture and training. So for the training one, let me start with a broad overview, but I'm going to ask Dr. Bellamy, who's hired a lot of our inspectors here, to give you a little bit more insight on inspectors. But typically, our inspectors, such as the ones in the resident inspector program, they're up here on a 40-hour-a-week basis. And a lot of our inspectors in the region are almost all are college graduates. Depends on the discipline and what they and what specialty they have. We have a number of engineering degree people. Some of them with advanced degrees. Some of them working on advanced degrees. We also have health physicists that are typically degreed in a physics in a scientific field. They could be in health physics or some other science background field. We don't absolutely require an engineering degree or a health physics degree. It could be in other factors, but our typical inspector will have those. We also have security specialists that may or may not be degreed, but they have security experience, typically either in the industry, in the military, or some other place. And then we have a robust training program within the NRC. The training program involves many weeks of specific training at one of our facilities, and then a qualification card and a qualification board. It typically takes about a year to a year and a half to pass those qualifications. So that's kind of the general picture.
It's a very structured training program. On the first day or shortly when we bring an engineer on board, they will be handed a qual manual that's at least this thick and maybe thicker, and they're required to go through all the information on that. Each chapter is individually signed off and reviewed by different NRC managers. They spend 3 to 6 months at various plants observing what's going on. They are not allowed to do independent work during that time period. There is always a qualified inspector that is overseeing what they're doing. They can then get to a stage where they have what we'll call, this book has a number of appendices in it. When they've completed the first appendix, we define them as Appendix A qualified. They can then do independent work, but it is all reviewed by a qualified inspector. I would say that it's probably more close to a 2-year process than it is a year process to qualify. There are a number of required courses. There's about 3 to 6 months at different plants. And then there is an oral qualification board that I can tell you from personal experience is the equivalent to a PhD oral qualification board. I've chaired a number of them, and they are a challenge. I will take this opportunity to embarrass both Scott and Sarah and tell you that I have degrees in chemical and nuclear engineering, and I did my graduate work at Ohio State University. Scott has a PhD in electrical engineering, and Sarah has a nuclear engineering degree from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, just to give you some feel.
Okay. If I could just cover real briefly your other question, which is safety culture. There's a number of ways we look at safety culture, and we get indications either from looking at a licensee's program on their issues that arise to them about problems, or our inspectors are given information from staff employees, or we take a look at various corrective action documents that would come in talking about safety culture. We don't have a scorecard for that. But in general, I think talking to the resident and senior resident inspectors, the safety culture is what we would expect at a nuclear plant at this facility.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. The next person after Lisa would be Andrew Larkin. You're up next. I'm calling the next person so they can get ready. What, sir, what's your name? You can go now. Yeah, you're fine. Yes, I'm just getting them ready. Sorry about confusion. He's on deck. There you go. Yes.
My name is Don Ogden. I'm the producer of the Enviro Show on WXOJ in Florence, Mass. Downwind and downstream from the Vermont Yankee here. So my question addresses the Vermont Yankee facility, but also Entergy and the NRC. since there's not much daylight between them. So the question is, why did the town of Lebanon, Massachusetts, also downwind and downstream from the Vermont Yankee News, vote at its town meeting last Saturday to abolish the NRC? And to extend the bogus evacuation zone from 10 to 50 miles. So my answer is in the text of the article, which is very brief, and I'll read it. Citizens of Lebanon, Massachusetts feel an urgent need to protect our beloved land and culture from the clear and present danger of nuclear annihilation. Given its past callous disregard for public safety, we hereby express a lack of faith in the existing Nuclear Regulatory Commission to protect us from nuclear accident. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission receives much of its funding from the industry itself and has consistently served as its protector and promoter. So that's their answer to the question, but I think it's a rhetorical question anyway, so I don't need your answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your question.
Let me just address a couple of points. One, that NRC is an independent safety regulator, so we're not part of the licensees organization. And as far as the money goes, they're required, so you don't have to foot the bill for the NRC's work. It's the utilities that have to foot the bill, but the money from the utilities goes into the general fund, and we actually get our money from Congress. So it's apportioned by Congress like other federal agencies. So we don't get it from the licensees; we get it from Congress.
Lisa Wyman is next. Lisa?
Hi.
Oh.
Hi, so I'm Lisa Wyman, and I live within the 10-mile evacuation zone, and I'm raising a family, and I have a business here in Brattleboro. So I've been following this issue and really concerned about how divisive it's been for our community, the continued operation of the plant. And I'm mostly looking forward to how we're going to deal as a community with the ongoing problem of the nuclear waste storage at the facility, which is not something I think we bargained for when the plant opened, or anyone has really bargained for. So I have a few questions regarding that, and I will say that I must say that what's gone on with Fukushima, 160,000 people evacuated, 8% of the total landmass of Japan uninhabitable, has really made an impact on my psyche. And the Japanese parliament's findings that although the tsunami had touched off the disaster, that it was really the culture that existed, the close relationship between the industry and the government that really led to a lot of decisions that worsened the situation. So I'm concerned, frankly, that the Nuclear Regulatory Commission here is prone to many of those same problems in terms of the relationship of the industry and the government. And I really, for one, don't feel that the Nuclear Regulatory Commission mandates for both promote nuclear power and protect people, in my mind, are mutually exclusive tasks. I will say also that I feel that the evacuation zone should be expanded beyond the 10 miles because in reality of a problem, it should be so. And the Red Cross person here in Vermont, I believe, is also calling for that now, which is unprecedented. As well as I believe that the potassium iodide should be distributed beforehand to all families in the evacuation zone, because in the case of Japan, many people did not get the potassium iodide that they needed, and a lot of children, particularly now, are suffering those impacts already in terms of compromised thyroids. I would like to ask if the Cobb well had been tested, because the last time I came to one of these meetings, that was an issue. If so, I'd like to know what the findings were, and if there was a split sample that was done, if the state of Vermont also had a chance to look at those results. because I'm very concerned about the ongoing potential problem of leakage and the implications of radioactive leakage for eventual decommissioning and the costs of that decommissioning. I'm concerned about the crowding of the spent fuel pool. I know Commissioner McFarlane is too, and I wonder what if the policy of the NRC is that spent fuel pool storage and dry cask storage are equally as safe, then why in your emergency contingency planning the scenarios for spent fuel problem are so vastly different and so much worse for a condition at the spent fuel pool as opposed to the dry cask? Then how can you say they're both equally safe when your own emergency plans are so vastly different for situations of both? I know I'm running out of time, so I would just say, can the NRC compel Entergy to decommission immediately and not just keep those spent fuel pools as is in the safe store mode? I think that's really important for our community, and I'd like to get your answer on that.
Okay, ma'am. We have a couple questions.
One last, just the nuclear waste fund, $18 billion in a nuclear waste fund. Why can't we use the estimated $4 billion of that to move the spent fuel pool into dry cask storage immediately nationally? I mean, wouldn't that take the onus off the industry and put the money to good use? Thank you.
Now, I've heard quite a few questions, and I have about 10 more persons that would like to speak, so if you can ask a couple of questions, we'll appreciate that.
I'll take a shot at it. A couple of them that I heard actually a question form. I think some of them were not necessarily questions, but Cobwell was tested, was split sampled with the state. I can't tell you the exact results, but they were low levels. We have that in probably a report. Yeah, it satisfied the EPA standards, and we could get you more information on the actual sample results. But the well's been capped now. It's no longer. It's been filled actually. So that's no longer an issue. It was sampled. When last time you were here, it was, well, when are you going to sample? Are you going to sample? The answer is yes. It has been sampled. KI distribution. That's handled by different state and local organizations. The NRC will distribute the KI to the state, and the distribution is not necessarily, how it gets out is not necessarily up to the NRC, but we can get you more on how that is accomplished state by state. Let's see. Spent fuel pool. The NRC continues its work on looking at the safety of spent fuel pools. So while you heard the comment, and it was accurate, that the NRC considers both modes, the spent fuel pool storage and the independent spent fuel storage, which is the canisters on the dry pad. Both of those are safe methods of storage, but that's not the end of story. NRC continues that there's a spent fuel pool scoping study that's coming out this late spring to early summer, and there's going to be public comment period on that, and there's going to be additional work that the NRC is taking on that. And the NRC, you talked about this kind of the culture of Japan, and that was well recognized in some of the reports. The regulator and the industry interaction. They've since taken steps to address that with the NRC's guidance. The NRC is viewed across the world as an effective regulator. We have these inspections by the International Atomic Energy Agency on a periodic basis. Our last one was 2011, I believe. And so the NRC has a good reputation. We actually provided some insights on how Japan could restructure, and they have restructured some of their federal agencies over there. So I took a stab at a few of them.
Okay, thank you very much. We have about 10 comments. Again, just want to remind everyone to, if you come up first, if you can ask your question first and then allow to answer, and then you can make more comments. On deck will be Andrew Larkin, then Nina Swan, and Gary Sachs. Thank you, sir.
Short question first. I understand you have a 10-mile evacuation zone. Has anyone ever considered if the wind blows?
Is that your question?
Short question.
The short answer is yes.
And so that 10-mile evacuation zone would no longer be where the stuff fell then?
No, in fact, and of course, you know that we have robust exercises, plume modeling. We look at how the wind blows and how that might move a radioactive plume from the from the site out to locations in the emergency planning zone. And so those studies take into account the wind and other environmental factors and base our recommendations on this.
So all that wind blowing still keeps you safely inside of the 10-mile zone?
Say that again?
All that wind blowing keeps you safely inside of the 10-mile zone?
The wind blowing is evaluated when you look at the plumes that are going, and we take our actions based on the plume modeling that we've done that takes into account the wind.
And then I'm sorry. And then the EPA has recently, in light of Fukushima, evaluated their standards, and the New York Times reported on this. But you have to bury really, really deep, and they're reporting on the internet that the EPA's new standards have changed the risk of cancer from 1 out of 10,000 to 1 out of 30 on account of that practical. And do you have any comments about this redefining of what always was, but seems to change everything so much?
The 1 in 30, I'm not familiar with that information.
We have a member from the NRC, Environmental Protection Agency.
Would the EPA like to respond?
First of all, we'd like to state that the proposed protection action guidelines are alphabet registered now. We're very interested in hearing your comments on that.
But I understand Obama has signed off on them, so I think...
Just 1 second. So we'll allow you to comment on it, but we're not going to do the back and forth. I think he's here as a member of the public, so do you want his comments?
Sure.
Okay, we won't go back and forth, okay? You can make your comments and then I'll leave.
Just real briefly, just want to stress that they are up for comment. We are listening to every comment. We're going to address every one that comes in through the Federal Register process. So please do feel free to come in to provide those comments and your concerns, and then we'll make it. We'll address them as they come through.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir, for your question.
I just want to make a quick comment that you may notice this audience is not as full as it's been in the past, and some of the people here are very knowledgeable citizens on the subject, and some of them, many are not here who are very knowledgeable on this subject because they have felt when they've come before the answers have not been, the questions have not been answered. And there's a style of answering that is really frustrating for us. So that being said, my question is, Robert Alvarez testified in the Vermont House recently in a resource, not sure which committee, on many different things about nuclear power. And one of the things he said which really puzzled me, and he said that Vermont Yankee pool, fuel pool, spent fuel pool, contains more than the entire inventory of spent fuel in the 4 damaged reactors at the Fukushima site in Japan. Why? 4 damaged reactors have less spent fuel than Vermont Yankee. Do I understand that? No?
I can help with that if that's your question, or you want to continue with more.
Well, can you answer that one first?
Sure.
And then you can make comments.
Sure. So over the life of the plant, and the plant's been in operation since 1972. So over the life of the plant, you do refueling and you replace, the cores. So Yeah, so there's room in the spent fuel pool for a number of cores. I can't tell you exactly how many, but that is the design. Yeah, they take the fuel out of the reactor and put it in the pool. So compared to the 4 reactors, you have 4 cores worth of fuel, and then there's more than that in the Vermont Yankee pool. So that would be correct. It's not different from many other plants, especially the older plants in the country.
They're the same make. They've been operating for the same number of years. They're Mark 1s, right? Fukushima and Vermont Yankee are Mark 1 reactors. They have been operating for 40 years, both of them. And one of them has a lot more than the other of spent fuel. I still don't get it.
I think that we're answering different questions. The question that I thought you asked was, in the 4 damaged reactors, in other words, there's 4 reactor vessels, and there's fuel in them, and the fuel in those is less than the total fuel inventory that's in the spent fuel pool.
So one is spent fuel, and the other is fuel that hasn't been spent. Is that what you're saying?
No. So what I think, if you're asking over the entire inventory of the entire life of those plants, they have fuel in different locations over at the Fukushima site. There's a large storage pool, and then they keep some of them in the vicinity of the reactors. So it just depends on how they move that fuel around.
But this is not answering my question. Why is it one plant has a lot more than the other? It doesn't, I don't get it. What's the name?
At the Fukushima Daiichi site,
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
At the Fukushima Daiichi site, they stored spent fuel from all 6 reactors in small spent fuel pools in the secondary containment, and then they transferred it to one large, wet spent fuel pool on site. That large pool was not damaged by the tsunami. So they have just as much fuel there, it just was not affected by the tsunami.
So we're talking about spent fuel then, really?
Yes.
Okay. The second question I have is, are you aware of the fact that there's so much leakage going on at Fukushima right now that they're putting it in tanks, radioactive leakage, afraid it's going to hit the Pacific Ocean if they don't, and they have no room to put the tanks they're storing it in, and so they're destroying a forest in back of Fukushima to be able to store these tanks. I live about 60 miles from Vermont Yankee, and as the wind blows, it's probably 50 miles. And what I understand from all that's happened at Fukushima is that there are no statistics that we can use as comparables. It depends on the wind. If you look at the plumes from Fukushima, the entire state of Vermont, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Maine is going to be hit if it's the same kind of wind plumage that's happened at Fukushima. And we have a 10-mile evacuation zone. We need a much larger zone. That's a comment. My final question is...
Ma'am.
Final... Wait, quick, 3 minutes. They had 3 minutes to answer. I'd like 3 minutes.
Well, what we'll do is... You didn't need feedback from your question?
I don't need feedback from that. I'm hoping that they understand what I said.
Yeah, because we have about 8 more persons that want to speak. And we'll allow you, if we have time at the end, we'll allow you to come back up. So if you can please allow the other...
Quick question. Why is it I was put ahead of the person who signed in front of me? That's a quick question. I don't think you're going to how we sign out.
Okay, I'm going to... Sorry I didn't bring a card with me. Gary Sachs. And one moment. Gary Sachs, then Rika Von Moltke, and then Raymond Scheidel. Again, if you can ask your question first.
My question first. Green findings. BY received a number of green findings in 2012. Do you have any findings that are nicer, safer, kinder than green findings? Would a no finding be nicer than a green finding?
Actually, we do have something that's different from a green finding. If you're looking at an issue and evaluating it, I guess there's some other options. It could be that they're in full compliance and there's no issue. Or it could be a minor violation, which meets certain criteria. Or it could be green, or it can escalate into, if the risk is significant, then it would start escalating into white, yellow, or red safety significance. And we take different regulatory actions based on all those different findings.
Okay, so I heard you say there are 2 findings before the green finding, but neither of those have a color associated. And then somehow there's a white finding that comes in after a green finding on the way to a yellow finding before it hits an orange finding, before it hits a red finding. Am I near close?
You're close, but no orange. So, and those are all based on risk numbers. We have risk analysts that look at a situation, and if they were to find something that's not in accordance with the regulations, we'd have our risk analysts review the safety significance of that, and they come up with a number, and that number would get us towards the risk significance or the color.
Is that number at all related to the Powerball?
Depends on what relationship you're looking for, Gary.
Last week, AOL Entergy published that the nuclear plants in the Northeast are next to go. That was after the closures last year of the Midwest coal, fossil fuel burning reactors. I heard 6 nuclear reactors in the Northeast are getting ready to be closed. I sure hope Vermont Yankee is one of them. My question is, so there's green, there's white, there's yellow, there's no orange, but there's red. But there's 2 that come before green, right? So were there any findings that were not green in the previous year?
I'll speak generically first, and the answer is absolutely yes. There's a significant number of minor violations that Scott and Sarah and the other inspectors identified during the year. Those are discussed with the licensee, and they are resolved and corrected, and we determine that they are of such low safety significance that they are not documented. There are also observations that these inspectors make that they discuss with the licensee on a daily basis and at the quarterly exits.
Okay. Scott, I have a question for you.
This would have to be the last question.
Great. This is my last question, then I got some stuff to read from the site. Scott, I got a question for you. The inspections last year, what percentage of the reactor did you inspect last year? No? You already gave me his answer. I'm looking for you. Discussed with you prior?
Yeah, Ron and I were, because, we talked about it, and he asked me, okay, what would the answer we should give that? And I would have thrown out the number of 10%.
10. Okay, he said 20. So if you inspected 10% of the reactor last year, that means in 10 years you'll inspect the entire reactor, correct? You have 100%, 10 times 10.
Well, there's some other discussions on, you might have some components that are buried in the ground, or say the reactor vessel would have a rover that would be inspecting that, and in fact, a person that would be reviewing those things. But I mean, so I'm not going to say.
Okay. Well, I'll just give that have to be final comment. If we have more questions, you can ask the questions first and the comments later. I mean, what you asked me to, sir. Well, we can have 10 more minutes if I haven't had. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate your help.
Turn the mic off, please.
That's fine. I don't need a mic.
Again, what we need, we're trying to give everyone an opportunity to speak. Ulrika von Moltke, Raymond Scheides, and Nancy first. Also, again, other folks have given me some more cards. The meeting was supposed to go to 8 o'clock, so we're trying to get everyone in as much as possible, so thanks.
Before 8 o'clock? Here.
Knowing what we know about the countless mishaps during the past year, we have to either assume that you want to deceive us with your assertions that things are just fine, or that you are deceiving yourselves. Maybe you can afford to do that, but we cannot. We live here in the vicinity of this failing reactor. This is our reality. We know that no technology is ever infallible, nor are the humans that operate the reactors. We know the consequences of an accident. A vast stretch of land will be wasteland for hundreds of years. People will be radiated. Many of us will die from cancer, the young and the feeble ones first. Neighboring regions, like the one I live in, 60 miles from here in Sharon, will be receiving tens of thousands of refugees contaminated and discriminated against and forever displaced, just as has been happening in Fukushima. If you can afford to close your eyes and ears to the ongoing disastrous and ever more hopeless situation at the Fukushima Daiichi reactors, we cannot. The implications for the whole country are way bigger than what gets officially acknowledged in Japan as well as in the United States. You, of all people, should know this, and we know you do. But you are too beholden to the nuclear industry to admit the truth. This way, you are criminally endangering thousands of lives. What I often wonder is how come you develop such a contempt for the lives of your fellow human beings. If you can answer this truthfully, I will even listen.
Thanks for your question. You're pointing to a lot of things based on Fukushima, so let me just discuss a little bit about the agency's actions with Fukushima, because as you know, they're ongoing.
Sorry, I have only one question asked.
And that is, how do we view the safety of the plants regarding compared to Fukushima?
How you develop such a contempt for the lives of your fellow human beings? That is my question.
Yeah, and the answer is we take our jobs very seriously, and we believe that safety is paramount, and that's why we're taking the actions that the agency's taking, very strong actions actually, to address the possibilities of safety concerns that may have come out of Fukushima, even though our reactors were in better shape than the ones in Japan. So that's what we believe. We believe very strongly in our mission. I think you talk to any one of our inspectors and you'll find a very strong safety culture, trying to implement safety and ensure that the reactors are run safe. So thanks for the question.
Okay, thank you. The next three people that are speaking is Nancy First, Raymond Scheides, and George Harvey.
Hi. I'm a Quaker. I come from Northampton, and I'm a member of the Shut It Down group that's here tonight. We are your neighbors, and you are ours. We are your wives, your mothers, your grandmothers, your sisters, your aunts, your daughters, and we are your children. We breathe the same air, we drink the same water, we eat the food grown on the same land. Our lives belong to you, and yours to us. Our destiny, our future, our lives depend on the same resources. Together we exist, or together we will fall. Do not take chances with all of our futures. Close down Vermont Yankee now before we are blown away, irradiated, contaminated, no longer able to exist on this our dear Mother Earth, home to us and every living thing. This is the only home we will ever have.
Thank you for your comment, Mary. Raymond Scheides and George Harvey.
I just had the one little question about inspection regimen, I guess. In 2010, at the annual assessment meeting, Paul Blanche and I raised a question about an inspection finding in that first quarter of 2010, and that was the finding that some of the cables, underground cables, safety-related cables at Vermont Yankee were found in a flooded state. And there was an NRC information notice before that and one subsequent to it that identified this as a very dangerous situation. You short out certain cables and you can plunge into a station blackout rather quickly. And I think flooding cables did certainly contribute something to slowing down recovery at Fukushima, if not to the accident itself. So the question is, has NRC reported any cable flooding in this past year? At Maine Yankee. I mean, excuse me, at Vermont Yankee. Maine Yankee's dead. I keep forgetting that. No.
Okay, can we allow him to answer that?
Yeah, please.
So you're asking not about the underground cables, but any cables that have indication of flooding in the conduits and the like?
Well, you know, we're concerned with those cables that are routed through underground conduits and pass through underground vaults, manhole type vaults. Did NRC report out on any flooding in 2012?
Ray, the first question you asked was, have we identified any findings with respect to submerged cables at Vermont Yankee in 2012? And the answer to that is no.
Yeah.
And we do look. Now, the second part of your question was, are there any flooding issues? Okay, that's...
Well, I mean, well, the first one is fine. I mean,
okay.
Because, you know, we're involved with the proceeding before the Vermont Public Service Board, and in discovery, in that proceeding, Vermont Yankee has surrendered to us a number of condition reports and system health reports. This is the basic people in the field telling people in the office what's going on. And there were a number of instances of flooded cables. So our problem is that you know, our perception of it is that NRC has not kept their eye on the ball, has not kept track of that issue. And this is really problematic because we attempted to raise this issue before NRC in the license renewal case, and we were turned down. So I think you can understand why that would be problematic to us, and I'd kind of like you to address that situation.
Let me give you a couple things to think about on that, Ray. It's a good question. There's a couple of initiatives that we have ongoing, and then there's one piece of information that I'll share with you that you may or may not know about in your looking. First of all, we are looking at flooding issues, and the flooding issues involve cables, they involve other means of flooding, you know, various plant equipment. That's the walkdowns that we required as the post-Fukushima action. So we required all plants to not only do the walkdowns, but then report back to the NRC. So there are findings that are coming out of that, and there are some cable flooding issues that are coming out of that. So that's one thing. Of course, there's also we look at the flooding analysis that's coming up out of the post-Fukushima action. I think you're aware of that. The other thing that was reported to the NRC during this outage, and you asked about 2012, but just so you're not surprised, during this last refueling outage, there was a issue where there was water that went through a conduit cable, and so we don't have the final results on our inspection on that. We're still looking at that and doing a risk analysis on what that would have, you know, what that could have caused in a flood. But that is another, that will be reported out on one of our subsequent reports. It just wasn't in the 2012 reports issued.
Thank you, Matt.
Sir,
we have 30 seconds.
We have about 7 more comments. If you want, at the end, if we have more time, we can give you more time. Well, we're not going to yield time. If you have time at the end, we'll allow you to ask more questions. Sorry.
Where do they get going at 8 o'clock?
We have
the lead in the condition reports basically say, this aging management program, the NRC's aging management program, this program is not working. So I would appreciate it if you guys look into that. We're going to file a 2206 on it, and it will be communicated. Thank you.
Thanks for the comments, sir. George Harvey, Patty O'Donnell, and Mike Mulligan.
George, if I could just, some of you who have probably realized that it's 8 o'clock. We do have a hard deadline, and so we're going to take a few more questions as we go. But so we're trying to accommodate it since we got a little bit of a late start, and we do have more interesting, good questions. We're going to try to go a little bit longer. We are going to try to have everybody out of here within the next 15, 20 minutes. And we have to get out of the building, which means we have to clean up, we have to put up the chairs, and we have people that need to drive to their homes later in the evening. So we're going to go through a few more, but I just wanted to let you know where we stand. So if people are thinking, well, I got to get going because the meeting's not done, we'll probably hang on a few more minutes.
Okay, great. Again, if you can ask the questions first, and then we can give the comments, then we can try to get everyone in. Go ahead, sir.
I'm George Harvey. I really don't have a question. I have a comment. The NRC, as I understand it, has a policy that it will stop operations at a plant that if it perceives the likelihood of a meltdown incident would be greater than 0.2% in any given year. That's what I've heard. I don't know that would obviously be an extraordinary circumstance. When the Vermont Yankee plant was first built, the expectation was that it would be about 0.1%, about 1 chance in 10,000. And the industry continues to operate on the basis of projections of that nature, despite the fact that a fair amount of empirical data has been accumulated over the years. And the empirical data indicates that the likelihood of a nuclear plant melting down is more than an order of magnitude off. The Max Planck Institute of Chemistry calculated that the likelihood was greater than 20 times what the industry had said. And in fact, the methods that they used indicate that the General Electric boiling water reactor has a likelihood of meltdown which is greater than 0.2%. And this would apply to all of these reactors. And this means that the reactor is being operated in violation of NRC policy. I'd like to say that I think that the inspectors have, I think without question, worked very hard. They're very well educated. They've done an excellent job at doing the things that they are required to do. But they are required to inspect a plant that is not safe, inherently not safe. And it's not their decision to do that. But the idea that that plant is safe, quite frankly, reminds me of a trip that I took up. I see policemen over here, I'm getting a little worried. A trip I took up Route 91 in 1962 with my older brother when he decided to find out whether the F-350 we had would do faster than 100 miles an hour, and it turned out it would. When we got home, he said that he had operated the truck safely. We had not had an accident. And the inspectors would look at that truck and they'd say, yeah, the brakes work. The oil doesn't need to be changed. It's being operated safely. But the underlying problem, which has produced, I think, 14 meltdowns in commercial reactors that are putting power on grids. I could run through them. I know there was one in Simi Valley, California. There's another one at Fermi. Fermi 1 melted down. 3 Mile Island, Chernobyl, 1 in East Germany, 1 in Czechoslovakia, 2 in France. There have been so many meltdowns at Senefield, I don't even know how they count them. I think there's 5 altogether. But the observation that I've got is that no matter how hard you try on the local level, it isn't going to be good enough because the overall policy is bad. The General Electric boiling water reactor is an unsafe machine. They should not be allowed to.
Just one comment on that, and that is, as far as your numbers, we don't have a 2 in 10 policy for, a reactor stays operating if it does better than 2 in 10. But I will tell you that. The typical event that might happen, if it gets to 1 in a million, we start looking at sending a special inspection team out. And so if it's a risk significance of 10 to the minus 6 or 1 in a million, that's when we start looking at taking extraordinary actions with more inspections to determine what really happened. So the 2 in 10 is not feasible. If it's 1 in 1,000 or 1 in 10,000, as you mentioned, that would be considered a very risk significant safety event, and we get reporting on those kinds of numbers as well. So.
Thank you, Chris. Patty O'Donnell, then Mike Mulligan, and then Ned Charles. Thank you.
Thank you for coming this evening. My name is Patty O'Donnell. I am the chair of the Vernon Select Board, former state representative, and I am a member of emergency management in Vernon. I don't have a question, but I figured no one else has one either, so it would be okay if I spoke. I'd like to take a second to thank you, because your job is thankless, no matter how hard you try. I have been in the plant, and I have witnessed, I don't know the two of you, but people that were NRC regulators in the plant before you came there, I've met them. I've spent time looking around the plant, watching what's happening, because I felt it was my job to do that as a representative of the district. I was at the plant on 9/11. The first thing I did when I found out what had happened was make a phone call and say, I'm coming over. I watched the procedures that were put in place to keep all of us safe. And I live a mile south of the plant. So I'm very well aware of what happens in Vermont Yankee. My children went to school across the street in the elementary school. I want you to know that there are a lot of people in this area that support Vermont Yankee and the good that they do in providing us safe, reliable electricity, keeping our neighborhoods safe, volunteering in our communities. Vermont Yankee is a good place, and you are doing an excellent job. I know for a fact that it's not always easy dealing with the NRC regulators because you're tough. And you're tough because you need to be tough. Now, I value and respect everyone's right to disagree. My son, right now, is over in Afghanistan fighting for our right to free speech. I respect that and I value it. But there's a difference between free speech and rudeness. And I think some of the ways you've been treated tonight is more than rude. And I, as a member of my community, apologize to the way you've been treated. Thank you very much for being here, and thank you for watching for our safety.
Thank you for your comment. Mike Mulligan, Ned Charles, and then George Clay.
Hi, I'm Mike Mulligan, and I'd just like to report that we live in the greatest country on the planet. I think our form of government is astonishing, and we all should think about how lucky we live in to be living in such a great country. So I want to talk about diaphragms in the containment. 2 years ago, Vermont Yankee had issues with SRB valves, the threaded seal. They put in inappropriate threaded seal material. It was qualified for 230 degrees, and it ended up being, there was a necessity of 400 degrees. And so recently, yesterday, the NRC came out with a Part 21 notification that some diaphragms, ITT diaphragms, and I'm talking about in containment. ITT diaphragms are the diaphragms that are in containment. Typically, they facilitate operating valves, and they come up with flows and control the flows of, say, the containment cooling system and stuff like that. So the question is, do they have any? And they talked about these diaphragms weren't qualified to 100 million rads. And stuff like that. They weren't tested for 100 million rats, and the code talked about 250 degree degrees and 265 pounds. And so the issue I'm interested in is it sounds like a containment type of deal because the rats were so high, you know, that they just wasn't tested for those kind of rats. Doesn't mean they couldn't survive. And there's a necessity and an accident that they survive those kind of things. So my question is, like with the SRVs, with the Vermont Yankee SRVs put in appropriate material, it did at 230 degrees as far as the maximum temperature that these components are designed for. They should be, if they're in the containment, they should be designed for 400 degrees. Does Vermont Yankee have diaphragms that are not qualified for the accident environment? That's one question. Number two question is, does any plant in the United States have critical nuclear safety diaphragms in the containment that are not qualified to their EVA accident, 400 degrees or 370 degrees? Thank you.
I'm not.
You can answer. I'm sorry. Excuse me. I don't expect you to answer to me now, but I would really like the NRC to get back to me, yes or no, on that question.
Okay, if you can stop by afterwards and give us some contact information, we may be able to find something on that. Now, just general comment on Part 21. So they come out, a supplier, a commercial supplier will say, we have a problem. We thought that this component was tested to, you know, worked up to this temperature, or had, you know, there's various things that they report on them working or not working. That reporting system comes to the NRC, but it is also distributed to the locations that have the equipment. And so there's a dual processing. Then what we do in the NRC is we review that and see if we have a generic problem, but we also send that information back out to the resident inspectors, and Scott can verify this because he and Sarah will see something that my branch actually sends out and says, or one of my branches sends out and says, we have this Part 21 problem. And they will review that and hand that to the licensee just to make sure the licensee's taking action. But as far as the specific issue on the 400-degree diaphragms, I'm not positive. We'll have to get back to you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your question. So Ned Childs be up, George Glenn, and then Ms. Sachs. I'm sorry, I don't know your first name on this.
Leslie. Yeah, Ned Childs from Dummerston, just inside the 10-mile zone, and good evening, people from the NRC. And I just want to say hi to the recent MIT graduate. My son's graduating from MIT, not in nuclear reactor science, but glad to see you all have your set of teeth, or at least some decently functioning dentures, because I have gone on record calling the NRC toothless, a toothless regulator. I've even used the alliteration toothless toadies. If you don't know what that means, it means sort of people that suck up to, and sort of not very friendly way of addressing an august body of scientists such as yourself, but I'm more for the political effect of expressing how I feel. Because Chris, you were here last year for our interrupted meeting, and Allison McFarlane, whose special assistant is behind me somewhere, was in Boston with the Blue Ribbon Commission, and now she's the chairman of the NRC. And I keep bringing up the same question. If you really are a regulator, if you really are in control, which I don't believe for a minute you are, I believe that the industry basically owns you and that you have been captivated by this industry, and that you're part of the nuclear village in the United States, and you're looking forward to a job with Andrew or Exelon, and so that basically this is your chosen path, and maybe you haven't figured it out that that's in fact where you are. But the problem I have with this is that if you are in control, you would order, there would be a thou shalt, there would be we're going to shut you down, we're going to pull your license unless you do start removing some of the spent fuel, some of the highly irradiated fuel at least from the spent fuel racks, where it's been proved that even Arnie Gunderson, who was in charge of the re-racking, says, oh, well, they're getting a little too close. You can have criticalities in the spent fuel pool. You don't want chain reactions in the spent fuel pools, which happen to be outside of containment. This is an old design. In the newer designs, the spent fuel facilities are inside the hardened containment. And this all goes to the early days of this industry from the 60s, where we were working with slide rules. We didn't even know that plate tectonics was functioning. And so why don't you order? Why don't you try it? See what happens. Maybe you'll grow a backbone and, wow, they really did what we told them to do. Take some of the spent fuel, one spent fuel rod, and put it in a canister. And use some of the money in the spent fund, or take it out of the treasury, or take it out of your operating budget. Because until you do start ordering the industry around, you really do look, in fact, as if you are toothless toadies of the NRC. And the New York Times article on this Fukushima mess up with all the tritium that they got to release now, and they can't filter the tritium, so you're going to have to just live with that, and it has a half-life. Just wait 300 years, it'll be fine. But it closes with this line. This all just goes to show that TEPCO is in way over their heads. Folks, you guys are in way over your heads. You drunk the Kool-Aid, you know you have your degrees, and you're this and that, but I don't think you have any overview of really what's going on. You're too far in the rabbit hole to see that you're not controlling the industry. Because who ordered some spent fuel removed? No, not you guys. Oh, no. So not even Turkey Point, where you're at sea level. Oh, we're going to put no reactors there. Oh, well, don't take any notice. The ocean's coming up, and those will become stranded assets that you're going to have some sort of like barge go out there with a crane on it and try to... Come on, guys. Get a life.
Okay, thank you for your comments, sir. George Klan, Leslie Sachs, and then Lori Cartwright.
I'm going to go back to the beginning. Ron, I think I missed something in your introduction, and I apologize. It could be just my hearing. I just hear, I want to know whether or not Energy Nuclear is operating this plant that protects the health and safety of the public. Could you, and I didn't hear that in your presentation. Could you give me a short answer to the short question?
The answer is yes, and it's documented in the March 4th letter that is on the record.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your comments. Leslie Sachs? Lori Cartwright?
Good evening. Thank you. I would like to suggest that for all future meetings that it's a requirement for you not only to state your name, but for what reason you're here, if you're affiliated with an organization or perhaps a certain group. That way there's a little bit more of a level playing field with respect to maybe we would have some insight as to where people's opinions or restatement of facts might be coming from. So let me set an example. I am here on behalf of my conscience. My conscience told me to come here and observe the proceedings and perhaps feel compelled to make a comment or ask questions or both. So I've had an opportunity to observe, and I do feel compelled to question. And the first one is, and they are perhaps rhetorical, so perhaps they will not have answers, but hopefully they can be thought-provoking for some people who may not be so inclined to have these sorts of thoughts themselves. Number one, how can our government allow the industry to continue producing nuclear waste when we are nowhere closer to dealing with its safe long-term storage than we were 41 years ago when Vermont Yankee went online? And I do understand that there is a period of 100 years where the waste is deemed to be safe when it's stored in dry casks. 100 years is a long time. It's hard for me to wrap my brain around that time period. I don't know if any of us have considered where we will be in 100 years and where that waste will be in 100 years, let alone the waste that is not in dry casks but is in the pools. I believe that is not going to be safe for 100 years. Number 2, if the production of nuclear power is so safe, why can I not, as a homeowner and a business owner, get insurance for nuclear accident? And the only reason the plants can get insurance for nuclear accident is because our government, aka us as taxpayers, are paying for that insurance. Number 3, why doesn't anyone seem to consider the environmental, health, and economic costs involved with mining and enriching uranium when we talk about how cheap the production of nuclear power is? And my 4th question, I think, is the most important question. Have you seen the Vernon Fire Department? Thank you.
Chris, do you want to take those questions?
I think they were pretty much, as she described, rhetorical. But I think the answer to the cask issue is that the federal government is still looking at the long-term storage, and in the meantime, the casks and the fuel are safe storage. And we're continuing to work on that. It's one of the items on that the commission is working on based on post-Fukushima actions. There's, as I mentioned, the spent fuel pool scoping study, and a number of other studies that get to the heart of the question: what are we going to do with the fuel?
Okay, Leslie.
Yeah, I'm Leslie Sullivan Stacks, and full disclosure, I'm a member of the Safe and Green campaign, but I'm here tonight just as an individual who lives within the 10-mile evacuation zone, because nobody else from the Safe and Green campaign is here, because they think it's pretty much a waste of time to talk with you. Part of that is based on our experience last year, but part of that is also based on something recently that occurred at the NRC, which is after much study, robust study, lessons learned from Fukushima, the NRC staff recommended to the NRC Commission that a certain safety feature be installed in Telemark 1 reactors. And despite the best efforts of the NRC staff, the NRC Commission decided that these safety features really weren't that important. Now these safety features cost up to $45 million per filter for the hardened vent. It's really difficult for us who spend literally hundreds of volunteer hours a month following what is going on, not only here in New England, but around the country at other reactors, and what is happening at the NRC, and feel any sense that this is the venue for us to make our public comments. Personally, I feel that you must really believe in what you do, and I am truly grateful for every worker and NRC inspector who has kept me safe and who continues to keep our communities safe. And it is extremely difficult to have no faith in our federal government that you can do that job, that you can truly keep us safe. Right now, my trust is in the state of Vermont. My trust is in the state of Vermont, that they will speak to us, for us, that they do listen to us, and they are fighting with their measly resources against a very large corporation that on every turn is suing them. Please keep in mind the human beings in this room We don't have the voice of the Energy Corporation. We're very thankful we're in the state of Vermont, where we do feel listened to. And I guess I don't have a question.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for the comment. Let me just point out one thing that you referred to the staff paper that was sent up referring to some actions that could be taken. I believe you were talking about the filtered vents. The commission actually has taken some action on that. There's two positive, well, I won't say positive, there's two steps that they've taken that are moving the staff forward on that issue. One step is to issue orders. They told the staff that we have to issue orders regarding hardened vents, and the hardened vents will have additional features put on them. If you recall, after Fukushima, there was an order, well, there was 3 orders that came out in a year ago, 2012, and one of those was on hardened vents, requiring certain features on them. They've added to that requirement now, and the staff is going to be putting out additional requirements on those hardened vents. So that's one thing. The other thing the commission has said is we need to do some rulemaking on for BWR Mark 1 and 2 containments, and that rulemaking path has been set in motion. So those are the 2 things that came out of the what we call a staff requirements memorandum based on that commission paper that was sent up that you're referring to. So thank you.
Filters on the hydrants?
Pardon me?
How about the filters?
That's what the rulemaking is going to be looking at.
Okay, I'd like to thank everyone for their questions and being so nice to the facilitator. Thank you so much. I'm going to turn it back over to Chris if you want to make some final comments.
Yeah, I just want to thank everybody for your time here and your questions. It's great questions. I know that there's different feelings and we may not have hit the mark on them. I want to refer you to the sheets in the back of the room, actually outside the room, for any ways that we can hold these meetings better, if there's better ways or forums that you like. We've tried some different forums and we're still interested in that. So just let us know, and I appreciate your time here. Thanks a lot.